Welcome to the Rybickulous Faith podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rybicki, and today we're talking about breaking barriers and redefining what's possible. My guest, Michelle Steiner, was told she couldn't go to college, follow her dreams, or build the life she wanted because of her learning disability, but she proved everyone wrong. Her story is one of perseverance, faith, and powerful advocacy for those with invisible disabilities. Let's dive in. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Michelle, can you tell us about your journey growing up with an invisible disability and how it shaped your school years?
Sure. I was diagnosed with a learning disability whenever I was in kindergarten. And that was really difficult for me. My teacher could see me in the classroom that I was really struggling to learn. I struggled how to do dot-to-dot pages. I was struggling with writing my name, with tying my shoes, and anything math related was really hard for me. And she recommended that I get tested to my parents with having a learning disability. And sure enough, I do have one. God really blessed me with some great parents that never gave up on me and really encouraged me. But my years of school were very difficult with having that. I can remember I had to repeat kindergarten and I had to start over in a new school. And it was really difficult for me academically and socially. Academically, learning was a real challenge. I began to receive specialty instruction in all areas, and I had to get accommodations as well because I was able to go into regular ed because they found out I was a good reader and good at writing. And another thing that I really struggled with, though, was social skills. When I was in learning support, I really struggled because most of my peers had difficulties with reading, and some had behavior issues, some trauma backgrounds. And then in regular ed, everybody just lumped me together with the learning support students, and I just really they thought that I wasn't a valuable peer. Nobody could. I went to a very small school, so nobody could hide, and they were close knit. If you were one of them, everybody knew I went to learning support to have a test read or to have extra time. And I quickly got labeled the outcast. And as I went throughout school, it got a lot harder for me during those years socially. Academically, I was in all regular ed classes except for math and resource, but socially, it got a lot more difficult. And I can just remember the bullying really intensified, but I was able to find God really worked in this wonderful way. I found a group right outside of our school district that was a faith based arts group. And I got to go there and I found other kids that were interested in the same things that I was. And I started to also understand the relationship with Christ. Before that, I grew up Catholic and my parents planted a lot of wonderful seeds where I went to church, but I really didn't have that relationship. So God really stepped in to do both things. I had that acceptance, and then I also got to know Him. And then after I transitioned out of that group, I found a writing group for adults, and that was a blessing too. I got to be with people that were just a couple years older than I was, and they told me you should write about having a learning disability. And I thought, oh no, that's way too personal. But I put that on the shelf for a number of years. I wrote some really bad poetry and other things I wouldn't want to read today. And 20 some years later, we're still in each other's lives, and we have a writing group that meets once a month to talk about our writing. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, and I got to see that. And also during my teen years, it was preparing me for what I was going to do outside of school. That was a concern. I knew I wanted to go to college, but I knew that it was going to be a challenge for me.
Mhm.
And I wasn't alone in that fact. I had other people who didn't think I could do it as well. I had a learning support teacher who told me, I don't think you can handle college because of your math difficulties. And she suggested a trade school, but it just didn't seem like where I was being led to.
Yeah.
And I even had a psychiatrist who told me, well, you're not going to be able to go beyond community college. But God had other plans in my life, thank goodness.
Yes. Um, those people, you say many people doubted your potential early on. What
Mm-hmm.
kept you motivated to pursue your goals despite that?
I think one of the things that really kept me motivated was my parents. They could see what I was good at. My dad found a story about a dinosaur that I wrote in second or third grade and said, wow, this is really good. And reading and writing became my world because up to that point, I didn't think I was good at anything.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big thing. And then having friends, that was really important to me. I can remember my friends could never fix my problems, but we could go and laugh and smile and just be able to have that support. So I think that helped. I also think finding those interests, as I said before, with finding my love of writing and reading, that
Mhm.
helped. And then just finding all those things that I like to do and knowing what my goals were and what I was good at.
Yeah. Were there specific moments or experiences that made you realize you could achieve things others said you couldn't?
Definitely. I think the biggest moment had to be when I was in high school. And I had a student teacher who told me, you can go to college because you know how to study. And up until that point, I didn't know anybody that went to college that was female that had a disability. And because all the books were about men that had learning disabilities and they were all about reading, nobody had a math disability.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was so powerful. And sometimes that her voice is what I heard when it got really difficult at school. And I still face more stigma at college. I had professors that were telling me and students that were saying that disability accommodations were cheating and it was really difficult for me. And I was told I was going to have limited job choices. And it was just during those times, that's the voice that I heard that said, you can do this, you can get through this. And it's the same voice that I heard when I was at university. And I was really struggling there with my logics class and other classes too. And I could just hear that voice, you can do it. And it carried me through all those years when I got my bachelor's degree as well.
Yeah, because you graduated from Slippery Rock University with a degree in community programming for Americans with disabilities. What
Yes.
inspired you to choose that field?
Well, one of the things I knew I wanted to go to college and I wanted to work with kids, but I knew that being a certified teacher wasn't going to be the wise decision for me. So I always went and chose careers that were similar to that. And when I was researching going back to school at university, I needed to find a program that I loved doing and was passionate about, but also had the least amount of math and science possible.
Right.
And this checked up all those boxes. And I could still work with people and make a difference, but I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't need to have it wouldn't be heavy on math or becoming a certified teacher. And what I later found out was a lot of students who were education majors and could not pass the praxis,
Mm-hmm.
rather than give them a degree they couldn't use, the school offered this as a alternative program for them so they could still go out there, have their bachelor's degree, and help people that had disabilities, just not as a certified teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't know that they did anything like that. That's really neat. And how did your own experience with disability influence your approach to education and working with your students?
I think that whenever I was in college, that's when I got to really understand myself a lot more and how I learned and how I thought. And I was very confident when I left and I graduated. That wasn't like that before. I used to be really negative. And then with working with students in the classroom, I find it just so rewarding to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that, especially students that have disabilities and maybe don't have services or maybe their services got cut. I love to be able to kind of go in there and to be able to help them. And I just think it's so important that I'll show them how to advocate for themselves. A lot of times we'll have a student that'll come in and they might need help on a project, but they're too afraid to ask the teacher. So I'll go along with support, but I want them to be able to speak up for themselves because for so many of my students, they're going to leave me one day, and I hope they're able to find any dream that they want. But for so many of them, their disability is going to remain. So I think it's so important that they learn how to handle that. And I can help them with anything except for math. I am a very big advocate for myself with that. But I think sometimes that's okay too, because sometimes it's really important when we see the students whenever they struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to students with learning or invisible disabilities who feel uncertain about pursuing higher education?
I would tell them that if they want to pursue that, to find a program that they want, that they love to do, and find a way to be able to do it, or something that's really close to that, and be able to go to a college that has disability accommodations and to be able to give it a try. You might go in and you might find, I really like this, and it'll all work out. And you might go in and think, oh, I don't really like doing this, or this just isn't the thing for me, or it might be hard. But I think it's giving that try. It's looking for those opportunities, and they have to want to do it. And college may not be for every single person. Maybe somebody does want to go to a trade school, and that's fine. Or maybe
Mhm.
somebody wants to get a job, and that's okay as well. So I think you have to know what you want to do, and you have to be able to be realistic about that as well, and then look for the supports to be able to make that happen.
Yeah. Now, you've been published in numerous outlets like the Mighty and Nonverbal Learning Project. What motivates you to share your story through writing?
I want to be able to help other people through my own experience. So I think sometimes sharing my story does help others with that. A lot of times I'll have people say, wow, that's my story. And I thought I was the only one that had that. And I think it just really helps to be able to share that story through writing. And I try to use it with some nature as well. I'm not able to drive, so I get that chance to stop and smell the roses when I on my many walks, and I'll get that chance to maybe take a picture of a flower or something other that I see in nature. And sometimes I'll combine that with a blog article. I might talk about the process of accepting my disabilities, like a flower that's unblooming or a desert rose. And I get that chance to be able to share about that. And I want to make that easy enough for someone with a disability to understand so they can relate to that, or families or other professionals who care for them so they understand what that person is going through.
Yeah. How do you choose your topics that you write about, and what impact do you hope your work has on your readers?
Sometimes I might do a quote that I hear. Sometimes it might be seasonal for things. Other times, life is just that great experience. There's
Mhm.
just so many things that happen that you don't run out of content. There's just, life is always teaching me something about my disability.
It's really God, the big creator, the big author. He's
Yep,
really got the story, and we're living it.
exactly. Amen.
Can you talk about your advocacy for people with invisible or hidden disabilities, and what does that look like in your daily life?
I think advocacy for people with hidden disabilities is so important because for so many of us, we're so used to seeing a person that has a physical disability or a visible one, and we think, well, that's the only disabilities that are out there. A lot of times, if I say that I have a learning disability, people will say, well, you don't look like you're disabled. And
Yeah.
they're looking for the walker or the wheelchair. And I just have to say that sometimes people can't see every disability. And having one's not a bad thing. A lot of times they think that's a compliment, and it really isn't. I mean, having a disability is not a horrible existence. But it's really important for me with having one that's hidden that I'm able to speak up for myself,
Yeah.
because people will, if I go in and I don't tell them I have a disability, they don't understand. So they might think because I can't do something, I must be lazy, or
Mhm.
I must be just trying to, get attention or to do something like that, or
Yeah.
I'm unmotivated. And that's just not the truth. It's just people can't see that. So sometimes I have to really be bold and say, okay, I have a learning disability, and going to the right people is so important. I might have to,
Mhm.
go and talk to people that I work with, a supervisor or a principal, and be able to let them know what is happening so they understand that. And then there's other times where I may just kind of brush it off a little bit, like, for example, I have limited hand dexterity. So if we're
Mhm.
trying to do an art project and I can't get the yarn into a hole or something, and the kids are like looking at me and the teacher's looking at me, I might just say, oh, I tried, but I just can't get this.
Ah, done my
Or
best.
yeah, not my thing. Or if I can't get math, I'm like, sometimes I may not say I have a math disability. I might just say, "Oh, math is not my forte," and that's not a lie either. But I think
Yeah.
it's just knowing what's going to be appropriate for that situation, because some people are going to be receptive to hear that and they want to know, and they want to also know how they can help. And other people, if I really don't know you, I might just put it in another context. But I think it's just one of those things where it's when you disclose a disability, we never know how someone's going to react. Somebody could react very positively and will give you the support that you need, and other times that person may not always understand that too. So, and may not be willing to offer that up as easily. So I think it's just that having that discretion on what we share and how we share is so important for a person with a hidden disability.
So good. What strategies or tools have helped you navigate challenges in both school and work?
One of the things I think that helped me when I was in school was having extra time on tests, having tutoring, breaking information into small things. Sometimes, if it's a lot of information coming at me at once or a lot of projects, I can get overwhelmed. But if I break it down step by step, one project at a time, I do a lot better. I think in life, it's just about finding ways that can help me out. I have dyscalculia, so I cannot read the face of a clock. So, an analog clock. So, what I do is I have a digital watch that I read,
Yeah.
or digital displays. My hands, with having the limited hand dexterity, I might need a bottle opener or a jar opener.
Okay.
And there's just looking for those different ways to be able to solve the problems.
So just finding the solution to your problems, knowing your
Yes,
disability, knowing what's going to help.
exactly.
What is one common misconception about invisible disabilities that you wish more people would understand?
I wish more people would understand that they're real, because people will, even ones that I know, will come up to me and say, "Oh, you must have overcome your disability because you've accomplished all this." And I'm like, "No, I still have the disability. Yes, I've been successful. God has been good to me, and I've found ways to compensate." But I wish people would understand that. Or we go back to what I originally said too, where people just look at you and think, "Well, there's nothing wrong with you." So I think that's one of the things, that they are real and they do have an impact on people's lives.
Yes. How can teachers, parents, and peers better support individuals with learning differences?
One of the first ways I think that they can best support them is to treat people as individuals. A lot of times we want to treat everybody the same, or we have a cookie cutter approach,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't work for everybody. It might work for somebody, but it doesn't work for each person. And I think it's looking what each person needs. And I think just judging that on an individual level is so important. I also think being somebody's friend is also important too.
Yes.
My friends couldn't change everything about me, but one of the things that they could do is be my friend. So I think it's giving that person a chance. I think is just so key. And I think it's relying on strengths as well and encouraging that. So if with my case, I found people that like to write and people that like to read. Other people have other interests too, but it's about finding those people that you want, and just having that friendship together is so
Having
important.
community.
Having
Yeah.
that community. Yep.
We just, I did an episode on fellowship not too long ago, and how it's really important to be successful and to find your peers.
Yes.
How was living with an invisible disability shaped who you are today?
I think it's made me a stronger, resilient person. I can remember, looking back on that for so many years, thinking things are never going to get better. And I've gone through a lot of difficulties, and it's never been this straight, narrow road, but it's made me a stronger person, just having to deal with a lot of those things, and resilience. So I think that's shaped that. Sometimes I think too that being bullied has caused me to be an independent person, because for a lot of those years, I had to be that person that showed up. I mean, for myself, and did things that had to make decisions based on my things. not on what the group was doing. So I can see that in a lot of what I do, there's that independence. I like being around other people. I can work well within a group, but I can also work well on my own.
Yeah. If you could go back and speak to your younger self, what would you say to her?
I would tell her that everything's going to be okay, because I can just remember thinking that everything was always going to be hard, and if I could just get rid of my disability, it was going to be all right. But that's not how it worked out. I still have my disability. I've still been successful despite having that, and I've been able to, things did work out in my life. And I think if I could have just go back and understand that, I think I just would have had a happier time.
Yeah. But, it still led you to hear and to now to share your story for other people to hear. What are your hopes for the future regarding awareness and acceptance of hidden disabilities?
My hope for the future is people will become more aware of what hidden disabilities are, and people will be more understanding towards that. And that is one of those things I think is just so important. And I think it's through sharing stories that helps. And I think it's just by listening to other people.
I agree. We have to connect and talk to people.
Yes.
Outside of your professional and advocacy work, what personal passions or hobbies bring you joy?
I always just love the reading, and I love to write. I do love to, that's one of the things. Photography is another thing that I love to do as well. And travel is big too. My husband and I love to travel places, and I love to take pictures of flowers or artwork or just the different things I get to see on our trips. And we have 2 kitty cats. So
I've been seeing your posts on Facebook, all the flowers and everything. So that makes sense now.
yes. Sure. You can find me on my blog, www.michellesmission.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you so much for joining us for the powerful conversation with Michelle Steiner. Her story reminds us that our challenges don't define us, our courage and faith do. If you are inspired by this episode, be sure to follow the Rybickulous Faith podcast and share it with someone who needs a little encouragement today. Until next time, remember, real stories, real faith with Rybickulous hope.